Hi guys, Morgan here. Super happy to be here and I can't wait to get going.
The Premier League has a serious Chelsea problem because Chelsea have just pulled off one of the biggest signings of the summer. We're talking about Morgan Rodgers and why I think he could be perfect for Chelsea.
We start with the major transfer story. Morgan Rodgers is the most expensive British player, breaking the record set earlier this summer when Elliot Anderson joined Manchester City for £116 million. Rodgers joins Chelsea from Aston Villa in a deal worth £170 million, signing a 7-year contract with the London club.
We have questioned Chelsea's signings over the last few years and in terms of what their plan is and how are they going to make this work, how are they going to make that work. I believe that in bringing Xabi Alonso, you're settling things down. I believe Morgan Rodgers coming to Chelsea is by design from Xabi Alonso in starting to make his mark as to what this team is going to look like in the present and into the future.
This isn't just another transfer. This is another major piece in Chelsea's plan to turn one of the most talented young squads in Europe into a team capable of fighting for the Premier League again. Because Morgan Rodgers isn't an ordinary attacker. He's powerful, direct, almost impossible to stop once he starts carrying the ball. He can create, score, break defensive lines and turn a harmless possession into an attack almost by himself.
Now, I don't know if you love Morgan Rodgers. I really like Morgan Rodgers. He's been one of my favourite players in the Premier League outside of Chelsea for a couple of years now. He's a goal scorer, he's strong, he's fast, he's direct, he can shoot from outside the box. He's got absolutely everything at his disposal to be one of the top players in world football.
He's a great player. He's exactly what we need. We're desperate for reinforcements over there. He can play in multiple positions. It's so good for so many reasons.
Absolute scenes here. I mean, I don't know that we've had a transfer in the Premier League that's been this shocking. This is incredible. Even more incredible because Chelsea aren't even in Europe. Even more incredible because we're led to believe that Chelsea have financial issues. Even more incredible because we know that Arsenal wanted Morgan Rodgers and he wants Chelsea.
And after becoming one of Aston Villa's most important players, Chelsea have now added him to an attack that already contains Cole Palmer, Estevan and João Pedro. But this is where the signing becomes really interesting because Rodgers and Palmer both love operating in similar areas.
Where does Morgan Rodgers fit into a Chelsea side? Because he's better central. He literally plays in Cole Palmer's position.
Both want the ball between the lines, both want to create, and both are at their most dangerous when the attack runs through them. So why would Chelsea spend enormous money bringing another player into the exact area where their best player already operates? Because Chelsea haven't signed Rodgers to replace what Cole Palmer gives them. They've signed him because of what happens when opponents try to stop Palmer. And once you understand that, this transfer starts looking absolutely frightening. Chelsea did not spend a British record £117 million on Morgan Rodgers simply because he had become one of Aston Villa's best players. They signed him because he gives their attack something they did not consistently have last season. Power through the middle, direct ball carrying, and another player who can break defensive lines without relying on Cole Palmer to create everything. Chelsea officially confirmed Rodgers on a contract running to 2033 after he left Villa with 40 Premier League goal contributions in 85 appearances. That matters because Chelsea already have technicians. Palmer wants the ball between the lines, João Pedro can combine around the box, Estevan can beat defenders from wide areas, but Rodgers attacks space differently. Over the last 2 Premier League seasons, Rodgers attempted 258 take-ons, completed 108 and made 457 progressive carries. Only a handful of players in the league ranked above him in those categories. That is the profile Chelsea were missing. Rodgers can receive with a defender behind him, roll contact, accelerate through midfield, and suddenly force an entire defensive line to retreat. He does not always need an overlapping fullback or a perfectly constructed passing move. Sometimes he simply carries the ball 20 metres and changes the geometry of the attack himself. And he's not just a dribbler. Across the same 2-season period, Rodgers produced 42 through balls, 237 progressive passes and 184 line-breaking passes, ranking among the Premier League's leading forwards in all 3 categories. That combination, carrying plus passing, is what makes him so useful. Chelsea can use him as a left-sided inside forward, as a central number 10, or even allow him to drift from deeper positions. Under Unai Emery, Rodgers regularly moved between the left, the centre, and even a front 2 role. In one stretch of the 2025-26 season, he started 7 times from the left, 7 times centrally, and twice as part of a front pair. But to understand why Chelsea were willing to spend so much money on him, you have to understand just how good Morgan Rodgers has actually become. His first full breakthrough at Villa came in 2024-25, when he established himself as one of the league's best young attackers.
Rodgers was named UEFA Europa League Player of the Season after producing 3 goals and 5 assists in 15 appearances. He also scored Villa's final goal in the 3-0 victory over Freiburg in the final. His development has been physical as much as technical. Earlier in the season, after returning from an ankle problem, his intensity dropped. Once fully fit, his sprints rose from 13.6 to 15.4 per 90. His distance covered increased from 10.7 to 11.1 kilometres, and his dual wins also climbed. That coincided with his attacking form exploding. Then came the goals against Tottenham, Leeds and West Ham, where his ability to attack from the half space and shoot through traffic became increasingly difficult to defend. Chelsea are not buying potential anymore. They are buying a 23-year-old who has already become a match winner, a European champion, and one of the most dangerous ball carriers in England. This is where the Morgan Rodgers signing becomes really interesting, because on paper, Chelsea have just added another player who wants to operate in many of the same zones as Cole Palmer. Palmer is most dangerous when he drifts inside from the right or receives between midfield and defence. Rodgers also loves those central and half-space areas, especially from the left, where he can receive on the move and drive straight at defenders. So yes, there is an obvious question here. Can both of them really play at their best in the same team? Tactically, the answer depends on how Chelsea structure the attack. Rodgers is not a static number 10. His biggest strength is movement with the ball. He can receive deeper, carry through midfield and force defenders to step out. That is important because every time a centre-back or holding midfielder jumps towards Rodgers, space opens somewhere else. And Palmer is exactly the kind of player who can exploit that space.
If Rodgers drives inside from the left, Palmer can stay in the right half space and receive facing goal. If the defence collapses towards Palmer, Rodgers can attack the gap on the opposite side. That creates a problem opponents did not always have against Chelsea before. They can no longer simply overload Palmer's zone and assume the attack will slow down. The relationship works both ways. Palmer's passing range can also release Rodgers early. Palmer regularly looks for diagonal balls into runners between fullback and centre-back. Rodgers is excellent at attacking that channel because of his strength and acceleration. He does not need the ball played perfectly into feet. He can receive under contact, protect it, and continue the attack. That gives Chelsea a very different route forward. Against a low block, Rodgers can help by carrying directly into crowded areas and forcing defenders to break their shape. Against a high press, he can become even more valuable because Chelsea can play through the first line and then use his power to attack the space behind midfield. But there is a risk. If both Rodgers and Palmer constantly move toward the same central zones, Chelsea could become narrow. They could crowd the number 10 space and make the attack easier to defend. That is why width becomes essential. Chelsea need their wide players and fullbacks to stretch the pitch so Palmer and Rodgers are not forced into the same lane. One can occupy the right half space, the other the left, with João Pedro or another forward pinning the centre-backs. That structure could be extremely difficult to contain. And Rodgers' arrival affects more than Palmer. It increases competition across almost every attacking position. Estevao can play wide or inside. João Pedro can operate as a striker or second forward. Chelsea already have several young attackers fighting for minutes, and Rodgers adds another player capable of starting in multiple roles. That tells you something about Chelsea's recruitment strategy. They're not just collecting specialists, they're targeting attackers who can move between positions, carry the ball, press aggressively, and create without needing one fixed role. That's especially important for a team expected to compete across the Premier League and Champions League, where different opponents demand different solutions. Rodgers gives Chelsea one of those solutions. He makes them more direct against teams that defend deep. He gives them another outlet against pressure. And he reduces the danger of Chelsea becoming too dependent on Palmer for every decisive action in the final third. The question now is whether all that talent can become a coherent attack, because Chelsea can have Palmer, Rodgers, Estevao and João Pedro on the same team sheet, but the real test is whether they can occupy different spaces, complement each other, and make the attack more dangerous instead of simply more crowded. Because if Chelsea can make these two players work together, this signing becomes about much more than Morgan Rodgers.
And that is why Chelsea really signed Morgan Rodgers. Not simply because he became one of Aston Villa's best players, not because Chelsea needed another expensive attacker, and not because they are trying to replace Cole Palmer. They signed him because they needed another player who could take responsibility for changing a game. Someone who can receive the ball 40 yards from goal and carry Chelsea forward. Someone who can break a defensive line without waiting for the perfect pass. Someone who can create, score, play across different attacking positions, and give Chelsea another solution when opponents decide their entire game plan is going to be about stopping Palmer. Because that has always been the danger. When so much creativity runs through one player, stopping that player can sometimes mean stopping the team. Morgan Rodgers changes that equation. Now overload Palmer and you potentially leave Rodgers space. Step out to stop Rodgers carrying the ball and you potentially create the pocket Palmer has been waiting for. And if Chelsea can find the right balance between those two players, suddenly defenders aren't dealing with one problem anymore. They're choosing which problem they would rather have. That is what Chelsea have really paid for. Not another superstar, another way to hurt you. And if Morgan Rodgers becomes at Stamford Bridge what Chelsea believe he can become, then stopping Cole Palmer might no longer be the answer. It might only be the beginning of the problem.